pretty much every Eastern European country has some version of stuffed cabbage. The one I grew up eating in Russia is called Golubtsi. Today we're going to make my version of it. In other words, we'll use the traditional ingredients in a slightly untraditional way. My version is all about caramelization. I want my cabbage browned, I want my sauce reduced, and I want my filling to be juicy and succulent. Let's start with the cabbage. This is the most basic cabbage variety that some people call white and some call green. You want to buy a nice big one, that's about 4 pounds. Let's cut out its cores so that we can blanch and separate the leaves. Start by making a square around the core with a paring knife. Then stab the knife into the corners of that square, angling the knife toward the center of the core. Keep working your way around, pointing the tip of the knife into the center until the core yields. Nope, that's not enough. If we are not thorough with this step, the first few leaves will fall off just fine and the rest of them will be stuck. So let's go around again until most of the core is gone. By the way, if the outer leaves are wilted or damaged, just discard them. Fill a large heavy pot with water a couple of inches from the top and bring to a boil. Add a good bit of salt. Dump in your cabbage. Yes, the cabbage will float, so you'll need to flip it periodically so that it softens evenly. Every 30 seconds or so, pull off the most outer leaf and set it on a baking sheet to cool. Some people shock the leaves in ice water. I don't bother. I simply pull them out before they get too soft. Don't worry, they'll continue to soften as they cool off. Since we'll be cooking this cabbage for an hour after we stuff it, doneness isn't very important at this stage. Once you're down to the very small leaves, it's time to quit. Fish out the remaining tiny cabbage and add half a cup of jasmine or some other long grain white rice to the water. Stir once and boil the rice for 10 minutes. Then drain and rinse under cold water. It shouldn't be completely done yet. It will finish cooking when we bake the stuffed cabbage. Don't wash the pot just yet. We'll use it for the sauce. When the cabbage leaves cool enough to handle, trim the thick center rib with a paring knife. This will make the leaves a lot easier to roll and will produce a much tighter package. Instead of discarding the ribs, I chop them up and add to my filling. Actually, this is a good time to talk about it. I mean, the filling. Ground meat baked for an hour doesn't taste particularly succulent if you leave it to its own devices. But of course, we're not going to do that. I have 4 tricks up my sleeve to soften that ground meat and to trap every speck of moisture in it. Instead of beef, I'll use the meatloaf mix that combines beef, pork, and veal. Pork will give us more flavor and veal will give us more gelatin. Yes, that magic water-trapping substance. If you can't get your hands on a meatloaf mix, just bloom some unflavored gelatin and add it to your ground beef or pork or whatever meat you're using. I'll add breadcrumbs to soak up even more moisture and to give my filling a softer texture. And finally, I'll add some butter. Fat is what gives French pâtés their softness and succulence, and believe it or not, that trick works outside of France, so why not? Now that you know the method to my madness, let's do it. Put a 1/4 cup of cold water into a cup. Sprinkle 10 grams of unflavored gelatin evenly on top and let it sit for 5 minutes to soften while you prep the veggies for the sauce and the filling. If you don't get back to your gelatin after 5 minutes, that's totally fine. It can wait indefinitely. Fit a food processor with a grating disc and grate 2 medium carrots. Reserve them for the sauce. Fit your processor with a chopping blade. Add 1 coarsely chopped yellow onion, 1 coarsely chopped celery stick, 2 sliced garlic cloves, and 3 tablespoons of chilled unsalted butter. Process everything until very finely chopped, scraping down the processor a few times. In the end, it should look like this. Put the veggies into a large bowl. Microwave the gelatin mixture in 10-second intervals just until melted and pour into the veggies. Add 2 pounds of meatloaf mix, the cabbage stems, the rice, 30 grams of panko breadcrumbs, black pepper, and salt. Here's how to take all the guesswork out of your salt measurement. Take the weight of your meat in grams, divide it by 100. Add 4 grams to account for all the non-meat ingredients, and that's your salt weight. As always, I strongly suggest weighing small quantities on a high-precision scale. If you don't have one, take a look at the nutritional info on your salt to convert the weight to teaspoons. If you're sensitive to salt, use your own judgment instead of my measurements. You can always cook a tiny bit of filling in a microwave and taste it for salt. Mix it all up with your hands very thoroughly. By the way, a mixer with a paddle attachment works great for this if you have one. To stuff the leaves, position them with the thick rib facing you. Put a dollop of the filling into the leaf. Wrap it up very tightly and pull gently toward you. Fold in the sides and finish rolling away from you. I start with the big leaves since they are the easiest to roll. When I move down to the smaller leaves, I use 2 of them for one roll. How much filling to use will depend on the size of your leaves, so play with it. As you finish each leaf, put it onto the baking sheet that was holding your cabbage and line up your rolls nice and snug. This will prevent them from unrolling. If you have any little leaves left over, reserve a few to cover the top of the pot and chop up the rest. Preheat the oven to 325 degrees. Set the pot back over high heat. Add 2 tablespoons of olive oil and the chopped up leaves. No need for salt since they were cooked in salted water. Cook without disturbing until they start to brown. Stir and leave them alone again. Do this a few times until the leaves are nicely brown. By the way, I don't always have leaves left over like this. It depends on the size of the cabbage, but if I do have them, I don't want to waste them. Remove the cabbage from the pot and set aside. Add the grated carrots and 1 diced yellow onion, a pinch of salt, and another tablespoon of olive oil. Turn down the heat to medium and cook, stirring occasionally until the onions are translucent and the veggies are starting to brown. Add a couple of minced garlic cloves and cook for a minute until aromatic. Add half cup of dry white wine, 750 grams of chopped canned or boxed tomatoes, 1 teaspoon of sugar, 1 teaspoon of pomegranate molasses or balsamic vinegar, and if your tomatoes are unsalted like mine, add some salt to taste. Bring to a simmer, stir in the browned cabbage if you're using it, and scoop out most of the sauce, leaving a thin layer on the bottom. Arrange the stuffed cabbage very tightly in the pot. You'll need to do this in 2 layers. Pour the sauce on top and spread it out. Cover with a few cabbage leaves if you still have any. Cover with a lid or foil and bring to a simmer. Place in the middle of the oven for an hour. Check if the cabbage is tender and if the filling is at least 160 Fahrenheit. Don't worry if the filling temperature is way higher, it will still be very tender and juicy. Make sure you are checking the middle bundles in the top layer since they'll get the least amount of heat. If the cabbage is still tough or the filling isn't hot enough, put the pot back in the oven and check every 10 minutes. You can certainly serve this dish as is, but I prefer to brown the cabbage bundles in the skillet to make them way more savory and interesting. This is a lot easier to do if you cool the dish for a few hours first, though I usually cool it overnight. Here are my golubtsi after a night in the fridge. Let's excavate them from the sauce. Wipe anything that clings to their surface back into the pot and dry them on paper towels. This will help them brown nicely. Set a non-stick skillet with 1 teaspoon of butter and 1 teaspoon of olive oil for every 2 to 3 rolls. I am using a little pan because I am warming up just 1 portion. When the butter is hot and the foam starts to subside, add your golubtsi in a single layer and cover. If you're starting from a really cold state like I'm here, turn down the heat to moderately low so that the first side takes about 5 minutes to brown. The slower browning will give the filling a chance to reheat. If you're starting from a warm state, you can crank up the heat so that they brown faster. You'll have to experiment with your burner and your skillet to figure out what heat setting works best for you. If you don't have a non-stick skillet, stainless steel works fine, but you might encounter a bit more sticking, so make sure you dry your golubtsi very, very well. Flip and brown the other side. Since mine were cold, I am doing it slowly and gently for about 5 minutes. Flip again. Add the sauce, cover, and bring to a simmer. If you were starting from the fridge temperature, it wouldn't hurt to check that the inside is at least 130 Fahrenheit. Remove the golubtsi to your serving plate and reduce the sauce to your liking. Mine looks like it's nice and syrupy as is, thanks to all that gelatin that we've added. Taste and correct for salt. Pour the sauce on top of your cabbage, top with sour cream and dill, and serve. This is comfort food with all the flavor knobs cranked up. As you might have noticed, this was a lot of work, so here are a few tips on speeding things up. In the video, I showed you each component in a logical order to help you make sense of the dish. But in real life, I do a lot of these tasks in parallel. For example, while my rice is cooking, I'm chopping up the veggies for the filling and the sauce. And I'm making my sauce while I'm stuffing the cabbage leaves. If I have some cabbage left over after I run out of the filling and my sauce is already cooked, I don't worry about browning that extra cabbage. I throw it in the sauce as is. Here are more culinary tutorials for you to check out, and the link to my online classes is in the description below.